Hi, my name is Chris Brennan, and you're listening to the Astrology Podcast. Today is Saturday, July 27th, 2019, starting at 12:22 p.m. in Denver, Colorado, and this is the 116th episode of the show. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the astrological forecast for August of 2019 with my good friends Austin Coppock and Kelly Surtees. First, we're going to do a little bit of a recap where we talk about what happened over the past month since we did our last forecast. And we're also going to check in on just what's been going on with Austin and Kelly since that time. And then eventually we'll jump into the forecast, probably about 45 minutes to an hour into the episode. So if you want to jump ahead to the forecast, you can find timestamps for the video version below the video in the description. Or if you're on listening to the audio version, you can find the timestamps to jump forward on the podcast website for this episode at theastrologypodcast.com. So this episode is being recorded in front of a live audience. So thanks everybody for joining us today. These are all patrons who are joining us who support the show. And for more information about how to support the podcast and the production of future episodes, while getting access to benefits like the ability to attend live recordings or early access to new episodes, please visit theastrologypodcast.com/subscribe. All right. Hey guys, thanks for joining me today.
My pleasure.
You are both in new surroundings, having both randomly moved roughly at the same exact time.
Yes, randomly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, you're both born, we established recently, very close together.
Yes.
Yeah, about a week.
About a week apart. And Kelly, you've just moved from Canada to Belgium.
Yes, just for fun.
Just for fun?
Actually for my husband's job, but yes. It's been an intense month. And I know it's interesting. I'm really keen to catch up with both of you, but especially to hear, Austin, how you are doing with your move. We feel like our move is sort of half done because everything's been packed up and sent, but we haven't received everything because, of course, moving countries is a little more of a drawn out process than packing up the moving truck and driving to wherever you're going and then unpacking later that day or the next day. So we haven't got to the unpacking part yet. So we're still a little in limbo, and because what's happened now, so our stuff has arrived in Belgium, but it has to go through customs, and that's something that can be a few days, a few weeks, nobody can give you any clear answers. So we knew that going in. So we're just appreciating a bit of a pause, but it looks a little different at your end, Austin.
Yeah. I think that your comment about unpacking later that day is hilarious.
Yeah, I know, because it really, unpacking takes like months.
Yeah, it does. Let's see. We've been here for about 2 weeks, but we went to a conference last weekend, and that was a conference we're very glad we went to. It was the VGS, the Veritas Genii Symposium. It's a plant magic get together. It was fantastic. And we'd signed up for it, I don't know, 8 months ago when we didn't know we'd be in the middle of a move. And so we got here, we were here for a few days, conference, and then I've been here a few days again. So we are even more delayed in our unpacking than would be reasonable. Also, this room was a horrid, truly oppressive salmon pink color. It was awful. And so I had to put 2 coats of primer and then 2 coats of paint on here to get it to be something other than a hell cage. And then move all my stuff in.
The painting. Yeah, that's what people sometimes forget with moving, is that then you have to do all the painting and freshening up before you can even get unpacked.
Yeah, and you can't set anything up when you're in the middle of painting unless you're cool with giving it a lively, spotty coat of paint. So yeah, I had considered whether I should try to make my office presentable for the podcast, but this is the truth of it right now, where there's a ladder over there, there's a paint roller. Some of my books are out of the boxes. There are also many more in boxes. I'm happy to be here, but very much in process.
Yeah, and I love how both of you are settling in towards the end of the Mercury retrograde, where Mercury's getting ready to station, and all of your stuff is basically about to show up any day now, right, Kelly?
Yeah, fingers crossed. Everybody do some good magic for that.
Yeah, hopefully they deliver your stuff and not somebody else's books.
Yeah. Oh, the books. It's the worst. I had to be real. Like I could bring, maybe 10 books with me. You have to think which ones to pick. Anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually, when I was packing books, I packed 2 or 3 boxes and wrote priority in
Yes.
gigantic letters on it because it's like I'm going to need these for work. Like these are reference books.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm glad I did that.
I think that's always like the biggest thing any astrologer has to move is like their book collection. But what's funny is there's like stories about that going back to like the 6th century of Justinian closing down all the philosophical school or the pagan philosophical schools and all the astrologers leaving and like going to Persia and like taking their books with them. It's like a
Oh,
story.
wow.
It's a story I always thought was deeply relatable because I kind of imagined them like packing up their books and taking them with them because I've seen that with other astrologers that are contemporaries like all the time that's one of their most prized, like prioritized things, but also the hardest things to move because you have so many boxes of them.
Yeah.
And they're so heavy.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
they're the most expensive thing to have to move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, guys. So let's we were gonna do some pre-show stuff. I want to start maybe by checking in on the past month and talking about how the astrology ended up working out since it's been a month since we discussed the forecast for July, and now that July is largely over, it would be good to check in. We finished part 2 of what has been lovingly dubbed the meat grinder. By Austin, and that caught
Yes.
on somehow. Did it play out? Did it meet up to its expectations? Did it live up to the expectations of the meat grinder?
Austin.
Silence, like
Sure.
million yard stare.
Yeah.
Um, it has been a gauntlet of necessity.
Mm. Yeah,
And
it's sorry, go.
oh, okay. I was just going to say, expecting it to be rife with challenges made it a lot easier. There were a few points where I was sort of like, why are things so hard right now?
Mm.
And I was like, that's not fair. Or, I was having normal human emotional reactions. And I was like, no, no, no. Like this runs for another couple of weeks. Just bear down until you get there and then you can complain. And that was actually really helpful because even though one portion of me knows what to expect, et cetera, the other part was like, well, but this is hard and I'm tired. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
I know. You talked about this, like you wrote about this like 7 months ago or 8 months ago. And so, knowing there was a challenge made it easier to rise to it. And honestly, I felt relatively blessed in my the numerous small challenges that I was pushed to confront, rather than some of the big ugly stuff that I've heard lots of reports of. A lot of people just getting hurt, and in some case dying. So I'll take a multitude of inconveniences over getting in a car accident any day.
Yeah, I'm one of the people that actually passed away was a guest of the astrology podcast,
Mm.
who is Tim Tarker, who is the founder of the Mountain Astrologer magazine. Passed away in early July, actually right when Mercury was stationing retrograde in Leo, which was his rising sign, from sort of throat cancer that moved very fast, and like he was fighting it for a few months, and then all of a sudden he was in hospice, and then all of a sudden he was gone. But thankfully, last year, I was able to do an episode with him where I'd been pushing to do it for a while, where we just sort of covered his life and his work and specifically documented his history with the Mountain Astrologer magazine. And that was episode 149 of the Astrology podcast. So I'd really recommend people go back and listen to it because it has a lot of added weight at this point, now that he's passed away, which we didn't anticipate happening so soon when we recorded it. But that's definitely one of the reasons why I've been trying to get some of these biographical interviews with some of these older astrologers to document some of that history while we still have a chance to.
Yeah, that's awesome. He was a kind, bright, and insightful person whose work carried astrology through a lot of the, I don't know, last quarter of the 20th century. that was part of, as I've mentioned before, that was part of my initial education in astrology, was a couple how-to astrology books from the used bookstore and a stack of about 40 old mountain astrologers that I bought for $20.
Yeah. And that's one of the best ways to learn astrology if you're early on is the Mountain Astrologer magazine. Because one of the things he was really good about he's a very humble person. But one of the things I respected the most, not just about the fact that he took what it was essentially like a photocopied newsletter is how he started it, selling it in like grocery stores in 1987. And it became over the next 20 or 30 years, one of the largest and most well circulated and well respected astrological publications in the world. But one of the things he was really good about was creating a space and a platform to showcase many different approaches to astrology. And you can find like articles on modern Western astrology, on like Vedic astrology, on traditional astrology. Like the Mountain Astrologer has always been very diverse or very good about showcasing the diversity of the astrological community. And I think that was a precedent that he set that then influenced other people and other mediums, including myself. And like what I've tried to achieve with the astrology podcast is very much not emulating, but influenced by what he created with the Mountain Astrologer.
Yeah. Well, and it was, it was not all written at a beginner level either. It wasn't just for consumers of astrology. It was in many ways for practitioners at a variety of levels. And that was something that set it apart from some of the other stuff, or from a lot of the other material that was on the market. It wasn't like mass market horoscopes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always appreciated the fine balance they were able to strike between having enough articles to make it a valuable purchase for someone newer to astrology, as well as having enough meatier or more complex pieces for those who are more well-versed in the language. So I believe the magazine is continuing though. So if anyone hasn't subscribed, you can jump on and do that.
Yeah, I think it would be a great thing to show of support is people renewing their subscriptions or getting new subscriptions in order to help encourage the team that he sort of left behind, including his wife, that they want to continue it and they want to keep it going and try to continue that legacy. So I would definitely recommend going and searching for the Mountain Astrologer magazine and getting a subscription, not just to support them for the hell of it, which is good to do in and of itself, but also because it's actually a great resource for astrologers at any level, and it should be supported by the community. So yeah, that was one of the things that happened. So we had the Mercury retrograde station at the beginning of the month conjunct Mars. We also had the eclipses, so the first full set of eclipses in Cancer and Capricorn, and that was really interesting to see how that was manifesting in different people's lives as well. Lisa and I actually did a workshop at the Mercury Cafe earlier this month where we went through and took examples from the audience of just eclipses falling in different houses and how that's worked out in different people's lives, showing how it really activates the axis between those two houses for a year and a half or a couple of years as the eclipses are bouncing back and forth between those two whole sign houses. And we're able to get some pretty vivid stories that we released as episode 115 of the podcast, just about showing how those topics can sometimes manifest very literally in a person's life. Do you guys have any good eclipse stories in your own life from the past about like an eclipse that fell in a specific house or axis of two houses and how that really correlated with some major change or like turning point in your life?
I'm just fact checking.
Like some examples were like, I had an eclipse that fell in my fourth whole sign house, and I moved away from my home state for the first time ever and moved to Seattle to study at Kepler College. And then not long after that, I ended up moving to Maryland to study at Project Hindsight. Or had an eclipse in my seventh house 10 years ago and started a major relationship. I had one that was really funny that was somebody I know who had an eclipse just take place. The Cancer eclipse was in their third house because they have Taurus rising. And I forgot to mention this on some other recordings, but it was really funny because they moved to a different state in the United States in order to take care of a sick niece who's going through a fight with cancer. And the person sold their house and they moved into an RV, and now they're now living in an RV, which is a funny like third house thing, down in sort of the vicinity of their niece, which is another third house thing. So like couple of overlapping significations of the third house there for that person.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
Yeah. So off the top of my head, Kate and I moved in together for the first time a long time ago on an eclipse on the ruler of my seventh. And I made the decision to stop writing my annual almanac as a print publication right around South Node eclipse in my 10th on my Mercury. Let's see.
Sounds pretty good.
I lost my voice for almost 2 weeks during an eclipse on my ascendant. That would have been South Node. There was a South Node solar on my ascendant in 2009. And I lost my voice. I was as sick as I've been in, I don't know, 5-10 years. Right around the days leading up to the eclipse in Cancer that we just had. So, first house eclipse energy is not sustaining, right? It's not life supporting. It's change, change enabling, change catalyzing. And so, that can be good. That, we both moved during the eclipse season, Kelly.
Yeah. Well, and that angle is active in both of our charts.
Yeah.
The late Capricorn is something for both of us.
Yes, indeed. And so,
yes.
Anyway,
well,
go ahead.
I was going to say, when I first moved to Canada, so September 2008, there was an eclipse just prior to that on Jupiter in my chart, which rules so much of my chart because like the Leo eclipses, just like maybe 2 months beforehand. And then I was teaching, so I couldn't go sooner. But shortly thereafter, moved countries.
Jupiter's the ruler of your ascendant in your 10th, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Any others?
That's it.
That's all right. That's all right.
That's the only one I've got that I can find quickly.
Well, you are in luck because for that episode we released, the eclipse episode, which some people have listened to, but for those that haven't, I just want to make sure people don't sleep on that episode because it was a really good one if you've ever wanted to know how to work with eclipses. And Paula Bellomini created this awesome handout for us, which is a several page, like a 5-page printable PDF, which just gives a table of solar and lunar eclipse dates to show you what the date was, but also what sign of the zodiac it falls in. And that's good for it's like an 80-year handout. So you can actually not just look at what the current and upcoming eclipses are, but more importantly, you can go back through your past chronology. And I would recommend especially focusing on what houses the eclipse fell on in the past and just seeing if any major topics came up when the eclipse fell in that house. And sometimes you'll find some really interesting stuff.
Can you go back to the early 80s on that, Chris?
Sure.
I know that's a while ago. I was like, okay.
So
there
like
yeah, I was
early 80s?
Yeah, like between 80 and 85. There we go. It was so
it was going through like Leo, Aquarius, and see, this is also useful because it demonstrates that idea that it just bounces back and forth between two signs for like a year and a half or sometimes 2 years. And then eventually it switches to another axis of two signs. But as a result of that, it means it's bouncing back and forth between two houses in your chart as well. And you'll often see this interesting exchange or interplay between those two houses at that time.
This is so interesting because in 1981, there were eclipses in early Leo again. And we actually moved from Australia to Fiji for my dad's work at that time.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. And so
you had a similar repetition.
Yeah. Super interesting. Thanks. So there you go. Eclipses on Jupiter. You too can move countries.
Yeah, so that handout, you can find it. It's linked to on the podcast website under episode 215. So just go to theastrologypodcast.com and pull up the episode titled Interpreting Solar and Lunar Eclipses in Your Birth Chart. Scroll down and you will see the PDF titled Solar and Lunar Eclipse Dates PDF.
That's a great resource, actually. I saw that flash by on social media at some point, and that'd be amazing because it's much faster to have that and lighter than having your whole ephemeris with you in a hurry.
Yeah, well, and the original idea for it was there's another ephemeris that ACS makes, which is like tables of planetary phenomenon or something. Do you know what the name of that is?
No, I don't, but I get the concept. It's very cool.
Planetary phenomenon.
Quick Google.
Yeah, looking it up really quickly. Tables of Planetary Phenomenon by Neil Mickelson. So it's the same people that make the ACS Atlas or the American Atlas that we all use. But that book has a few page thing where it does something similar in terms of showing eclipse dates. So that was kind of where I got the idea for doing another handout like that to make it a little bit more clean and a little bit easier to print out and everything else. But that's a good ephemeris to check out for ephemeris aficionados.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Okay, so eclipses were one of the components of the meat grinder. We've talked a little bit about the Mercury retrograde, and I think we wanted to go back to that because there's a little bit more Mercury retrograde stuff to discuss.
Yes.
One of the realizations I had, and it wasn't a major one, but it was useful for me, was thinking about the astronomy of Mercury retrograde this month. I realized one of the primary keywords for Mercury retrograde for me has always been delays. So delays in the manifestation of something or delays in the attempt to manifest or initiate something, and sometimes detours or digressions. But I was realizing that part of the astronomical reason for that this month is that what happens when Mercury goes retrograde is it's moving forward in the zodiac. It's moving forward in its normal motion in this like path around the Earth from our perspective. But then when it goes retrograde, it suddenly slows down and starts doing a loop where it starts moving backwards, but eventually it stations direct and does another loop and comes back and starts going forward again, and then eventually returns back to essentially where it started, and then it continues or it completes its journey. So what's happening from an astronomical standpoint is Mercury eventually it's going, but then it has a slight detour or a slight delay, and then eventually gets back on on track or back onto its path and does complete its journey. So I think that's the reason astronomically why symbolically Mercury retrograde, one of the primary keywords is just delays, because it's not that Mercury just doesn't complete its journey or gets completely thrown off track. It just has this detour for about 3 weeks before eventually doing what it needs to do and completing its journey. So I wanted to mention that just as a useful thing to think about when people are trying to understand and conceptualize why Mercury retrograde means what it means. It's because it has that specific astronomical movement, and that astronomical movement has a mirroring or a symbolic connection with what's happening on Earth at that time. And that's, Mercury retrograde.
Yeah, it looks, if you trace its path, it looks like a little roller coaster, loop-de-loop. One of the things that creates the delays or part of the delayed journey is that you get circuitous routes and circumambulatory movement towards goals rather than straight lines. You'll know because, with a detour, you get there, but it's not a straight line. You planned on the straight line. But as Chris was saying, if you look at what Mercury's doing this, right?
Yeah.
The path from here to here is this rather than this. And you see that too. And you'll get there, but most of the time you'll get there, but you need but there's that country road quality to it that
the freeway is not available. You've got to take the roundabout route.
Yeah, and I had a funny one with that this time where I ordered this book, this like expensive academic book that from Brill that was a translation of one of the books of the 12th century astrologer Ibn Ezra, and it has like a Hebrew critical edition and then a Greek or an English translation. And after a couple of weeks, I just got the book the other day and I opened up the front cover of the book, and then the inside was backwards and upside down, so that it started on the first page with the index, and then the book went backwards in order, and also all the text was like facing the opposite direction or was upside down. And it wasn't because the book was in Hebrew or something like that, but it was because the book was just misprinted. So then I had to file a claim on Amazon and ship the book back, and then eventually once they get it, they'll refund me the money, and then I'll have to order another, and then eventually I'll get the book, but there'll be this like annoying delay in the
Yeah.
process. And that's just so common of Mercury retrograde. And sometimes it happens on little, just annoying things like that, like just trying to get a book. But other times it happens on bigger things as well, but it's still the same dynamic or process oftentimes.
Yeah, that's the shape
Absolutely.
of it.
Absolutely. I mean, I had a really classic Mercury retrograde years ago when I was flying from Sydney back to Canada and, went to the airport, went through customs, got on the plane takes off. We fly about an hour and a half north. We have dinner on the plane, and the plane's like, something's wrong. We have to go back to Sydney. It's a 15-hour flight, mind you. We're going to have to go back to Sydney. You're all going to have to leave the airport and go and stay in a hotel or go back to wherever you came from and come back again in the morning, and we'll go for a take two. And massive loop-de-loop. Still got there, but on obviously a massive delay. So it's that perfect. That's a really good visual actually for people, like the country road detour.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Did you have anything come up this one or any past famous Mercury retrograde stories or anecdotes like that, Austin?
Sure. Let's see. So yesterday, I was trying to get my mic situation working, and this is, this is a fancy, high quality mic, and like most sophisticated things, there are more points of breakage. It's not a plug and play. And so I'd been messing with it ever since I set up my desk, and it hadn't quite worked, but I had something else to do and it wasn't necessary. But last night I was like, okay, we're going to do the podcast tomorrow. I need to make sure this works. And I spent about an hour just going over every connection and everything. Everything was correct, but the computer wasn't recognizing the device.
Okay.
And I was getting very frustrated. And then Kate came down, and I went over it with her, and she just like unplugged some stuff and plugged it back in, and it worked, which was wonderful. And at the same time, extremely frustrating. It was like, you're like, but I just did that 4 times, but it worked, but it worked. And yeah, so, like getting all of the connections right. And I don't know, it just needed to be unplugged. The right things needed to be unplugged and then replugged in the right order, which is not something you find in an instruction manual. Let's see. On the Mercury retrograde,
what is the purpose of that, though? Because like sometimes with Mercury retrograde things where you have to do the do-over, you have to do it twice. It's like noticeably better the second time when you have to put more effort into it, or there's something you learn from the process. But it seems like sometimes it's just like an annoying thing where you have to do it twice, or it takes longer than it should have. And I wonder what the point is, if there's a point to that.
Well, I think sometimes there is a point, and then sometimes you're just spitting into the wind.
Yeah, sometimes that's an experience that we have to have, and I don't know, that experience exists in the world, and like those are sometimes just the times in which that happens.
It's certainly available during those times.
Sure. Okay. What was your other
cheap
story
at the store? Oh, let's see. Our dishwasher. So we ordered a dishwasher, and then the dishwasher came, and the dishwasher fellow came, and the whole like under sink area gets taken apart and this and that. And I don't even remember, but there's like some widget that's missing. And so now we have and so they weren't able to install it. And so there's just a giant dishwasher in the middle of the living room, and the dishwasher man can't come back until next week. And that one's particularly good for Mercury and Cancer because it's water, and it's about cleaning, and it's a domestic product, right? We have Mercury in the domicile of the moon. It's like, thanks.
right?
Yeah, that's annoying.
Oh, and sure. Kate reminds me that they rescheduled the install for next Wednesday, which is the day that Mercury goes direct.
I love it.
I love it. Perfect. All right.
That's so good.
Any other meat grinder anecdotes or other things now that we're coming towards the tail end of it? We're almost out of it.
I don't have any. Do you want to share anything, Austin? I feel like I've just been in moving land, and that's
Yeah.
been emotional. Like you mentioned before, Austin, for us, a lot of the logistical stuff, touch wood, has gone relatively well. It's been the emotional instability of just being in transition and being in flux. And that's been, it's not that it's not to be expected, but then once you're in it, you're like, oh yeah, I knew it would feel unsettling, and this is what unsettling feels like, and I don't like it. Yeah.
Yeah, there has been there's certainly been some, well, yes, in transition internally as well as externally.
That's a great way of putting it.
All of the meat grinder stories that I can think about right now are just more unpleasant things that happen to people. Like my friend's daughter got blood poisoning from a spider bite.
Nasty.
Yeah.
I can tell you stories like that, but I think everybody knows that this was a difficult period and that we are all happy to move on to the rest of life and the rest of 2019.
Yes, definitely. And there are some nice things around the corner as all the planets start moving into Leo here at the beginning of August. So we will get to that in just a second. Any other pre-show chat stuff that we need to mention?
I mean, the one thing, like, because we flew with our cats just a couple of days after Mercury went retrograde. So, of course, that was a bit of a nervous Nelly. And, of course, Mercury's retrograde with Mars in Leo, which is 6th house for me. So I'm, on high alert. What's going to be going on with these cats in the plane? So we did actually have the cats in the cabin with us. They were like our cabin luggage. They were under the seat in front of us. But actually, everything went really smoothly. We had a tiny snafu with the paperwork when we were checking into the flight, where they just couldn't find the second receipt, because when you bring a cat onto a plane, you've got to pay for it. They weren't interested in any of the health documents or vet checks. They're like, we just want to make sure that you've paid for both of these cats. And, there was just a little hiccup while they found that. And then the funniest thing was when we landed in Belgium, we're going through customs and immigration control, and we've got, the cats in soft carriers, one on, my husband's got one, I've got another. And we go up, we give them our passports. They're babbling to my husband in French because it's French speaking and I don't speak French. And they didn't ask anything about the cats. They didn't even comment that we hadn't. There was just literally nothing required, and off we went. So it was like phenomenal, the fact that, humans, like if you don't have a Canadian or an American passport and you enter America, there's fingerprinting and scanning of all kinds of like eyes and things. But we were able to bring our cats into another country with not even a stamp on a piece of paper.
Interesting.
Right, 'cause in Australia, like they're really stringent about that.
Oh, yeah.
And, like vegetables, right?
Australia and England, because they're self-contained environments, because they're islands, they have hugely high quarantine laws. Like if you bring a domestic pet into Australia, you have to have your pet into quarantine for anywhere from 2 weeks to 6 weeks, depending on where it's coming from. Because someone's asking what airline. We were on a Brussels airline flight. Funnily enough, there are a lot of airlines that will fly pets. I guess there's a certain length of flight. The flight we were on was just under 8 hours. And the reason that we understood the pets were allowed in the cabin is the weight of the pet. So small dogs and cats, they just said, yep, they'll go in the cabin with you. There wasn't even any discussion. Yeah.
So we actually had a cat situation.
Oh, you guys did? Not a good one though.
Yeah, the day that the movers came to throw everything in the truck, our cat ran away. And so we looked for him, and then came back a couple days later. And we thought he'd run outside because he does that. And we were looking around outside, et cetera, et cetera. And I went inside and I was looking around and doing some stuff. And I heard a meowing from under the floor. And he had gotten into the crawl space underneath the floor and then had gotten bored. And I went to the access point and grabbed him. But yeah, it was underworld cat trouble that took about 3 days to figure out.
Literally underground. And how's he settling into the new place? Because cats really don't like moving their castles.
He likes it. He likes the new place quite a bit.
Excellent.
The master bedroom is the only thing on the top floor, And so there's a landing, and he can kind of look out over at everything. And cats like to have that superior position, right? They
Yeah.
like to look down on things. And so I think he's pleased that he can survey much of his domain without being surveyed himself.
Yes. Well, that's cool.
Yeah, I like that. So you guys are all otherwise getting settled, and it'll be interesting. Hopefully, a month from now. Do you think in a month you guys will both be relatively settled?
I hope so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll be settled or mildly alcoholic. I'm not sure.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it takes a while. When we last moved, we had all the main stuff done within a couple of weeks, but there were some things that were a few months before we got around to.
Yeah, I mean, it took me a while to get settled into the new place.
Yeah, how long did
here.
it take you?
I don't know, a few months, because then we started traveling and going to like Norwalk, and then I went to Europe, and then I came back, and then I flew to another LA thing recently for an interview, which I can't talk about yet, but will maybe come out later in the month of August, and I'll announce that when that's out. All right, so we're about to.
I love that we're
basically
talking
time to
moving with cats with the Mercury retro in Leo.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
So let's transition to the forecast. Before that, we have to get some of our news and announcements out of the way really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So let's bang that out. So Kelly, what do you have coming up this month?
So August, I have a webinar for Astrology University on Saturday, August 10th, not August 11th, August 10th, on Activate Your Ascendant Midheaven. So it's about how to work with the main points to do with identity and life direction. So that'll just be a Saturday webinar that you can sign up for via my website.
Which is kellysastrology.com.
Yes, exactly. Sorry. Thank you.
Brilliant. Austin, what do you have coming up?
Well, I have an 11-week class which begins on August 8th, which is on Tarot and Astrology. We'll be looking at the the cards and the Rider-Waite.
Tarot and Astrology. Tell me more about that.
Well, so the cards have been assigned astrological connections in most decks. I'll be looking at the Rider-Waite-Smith system, which I've used for 20 years. And just sort of building the bridge between, okay, so for example, the Chariot is connected to Cancer. How do those connect, right? Because it's not just a symbol, it's not just a picture of a crab. There's a relationship between the tarot and astrology, but they're not identical. And so I'll be spending some time going over every single card and building that bridge. And then also looking at practical things you can do, practical ways, how the cards that come up in a reading can reference chart positions, and how to illustrate a chart using cards. So that begins on August 8th, and that's going to be every Thursday for about almost 3 months.
Awesome. And where can people find out about it?
At my website, austincoppock.com. And then as far as electional work for Sphere and Sundry, the skies have not been too juicy over the last 2 months. And so there's nothing percolating right now, but August, as we're going to get to, has some nice moments. And so Sphere and Sundry fans can look forward to some tasty offerings in September.
Brilliant.
Yes, I'm excited to see what Sphere and Sundry will be rolling out after August.
Some of them you will expect. Some of them you'll be like, oh, how did I miss that?
Oh, I like it. Throwing down the gauntlet.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. As for myself, as I announced last month, the price of my courses, like my course on ancient Hellenistic astrology, is being raised August 1st. So that will have gone up already by the time most people listen to this. But if you're listening to this before August 1st, and if you want to get in before the course price raises, you can still do so before the first of the month. Even after the first of the month, the course is still like priced relatively reasonably because it has over 100 hours of audio with hundreds of example charts, and it takes you from the basics of ancient astrology all the way through intermediate and advanced techniques so that you come out of it knowing how to read birth charts pretty effectively, I have to say. You can find out more information about that at courses.theastrologyschool.com. So that's one thing. Our electional report that I did with Lisa, where we picked out one of the best electional charts for each month for all 12 months of the year. Since we're already into August, we've discounted that heavily. So you can get that for a way discounted price at just doing a Google search for 2019 Electional Astrology Report. And you'll find that on my website at chrisbrennanastrologer.com. Also, since we're almost finished with, or over halfway through the year, the Astrology Podcast 2019 Astrology Calendar Poster Bundle on Amazon. We've got about 70 of those posters left, and then that's it for those posters. So that's heavily discounted at this point because I'm just trying to get rid of the rest of the stock. So it's like $10 or $12 for 3 posters, which is a pretty good deal. So do a Google search for 2019 Astrology Calendar Poster Bundle, and you'll find that on Amazon. Other stuff to mention in passing, the NCGR conference is coming up at the very end of August. So the last big astrology conference of the year is the NCGR conference happening in Baltimore from August 30th to September 3rd, so Labor Day weekend in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm going to be there. Lisa Scheim's going to be there. There's going to be a bunch of other astrologers giving lectures and workshops there. You can find out more information about it at geocosmic.org. Other conferences coming up, the ESAR conference next year in September of 2020. So it's a long ways away, but some of the schedule for that is being finalized. And we are tentatively able to announce that Austin and Kelly and I are going to be doing a pre-conference workshop there at that conference, which is really exciting. It's going to be the first time the 3 of us have done a full workshop together. And I'm excited about announcing more details for that pretty soon.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's going to be so much fun.
Yeah.
I can't believe we have to wait a whole year.
Yeah, that's kind of annoying, but it's going to be here in Denver, which I'm excited about. So people will be able to visit my home state. Maybe people can visit the Mercury Cafe, which has appeared in some of the podcast videos recently, like the Eclipse one. And there'll be lots of other fun stuff. So it's time to start getting excited about that conference, which is definitely going to be the biggest conference next year.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I think that's it for news and announcements. Why don't we transition into talking about the astrological forecast for August of 2019?
All right.
Let's do it.
So let's start out actually with the artwork for August that Paula Bellomini made for us. And this is initially just the sort of the ingresses and the lunations and the retrograde stations or direct stations for the month of August. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes. So this is the brief sort of glimpse or brief overview. We've got a new moon at the beginning of the month in Leo, then a full moon in Aquarius, then one of those rare months where there's another new moon, which takes place in Virgo at the end of the month. We've got Jupiter stationing direct finally in Sagittarius, Uranus stationing retrograde in Taurus, Mercury going into Leo, actually most of the planets going into Leo at this point in the year and trining Jupiter. Then later in the month, everything starts shifting into Virgo. You can see Mars go in first, then Venus, then the Sun, then Mercury. So that's kind of the very broad overview of the month. And here's the transit chart with all of that superimposed on a 12-sign zodiac wheel. So you can see not where those lunations are, not just where the lunations are, but also sort of the movement of the planets, where they start at the beginning of the month and where they'll end up by the end of the month. All right, so where do you guys want to start? Should we start at the top of the month, top of August?
Yeah, well, let's start out with the transition into August, which bookends the configurations, which really started at the beginning of June, the end of the meat grinder, as it were.
All right, I'll throw up the solar fire chart. So everybody always asks me each month what program I'm using. I'm using the program Solar Fire, which is usually for PCs, although they've got a Mac version coming out later this year. If you live in North America, I think you can buy it through Astrolabe or alabe.com, and they've given us the promo code AP15 to get a discount on the program. So this is the chart for right now, but let's move it forward a few days to August 1st. There we go. All right, so
nice.
Transition point. You're saying we're at the transition point. We're moving out of the meat grinder. We're moving out of the astrology of June and July, which was very dominated by the Cancer Capricorn axis, I feel like.
Yeah. Right. And so the last day of July is the new moon in Leo, and that's our first non-eclipsed lunation since June. Right. So we're moving out of the eclipse cycle, and eclipses aren't done the second they're over. At the very to a you can extend the time frame.
What was that, Kelly?
I have all this cardboard boxing to help with like soundproofing, and I guess my cats were trying to get in behind it and just knocked it all over.
Okay.
Sorry
Well,
about that, Austin.
Oh, it's okay. I was just saying, at the very least, to get out of the feel of eclipse season, you need a non-eclipsed lunation, right? So August begins on the heels of our first non-eclipsed lunation in a while, and the last day of July also holds Mercury's direct station. So August begins finally out of the eclipses and with a direct Mercury.
yeah.
And so that's a pretty big transition in and of itself.
Yeah, I love that. That's like starting fresh in two different ways. Like starting out with a new moon in Leo. It looks like it's at 8 degrees of Leo, and starting out with Mercury stationing direct in Cancer and completing the 3-week Mercury retrograde cycle.
Yeah. And
So,
so, already we have on August 1st, we have the Sun and Mars and Venus all in Leo, right? And so as far as sign emphasis, we had a lot of Cancer Capricorn, and this sets the stage for a lot of Leo, which will be followed later in the month by a lot of Virgo.
Yeah, it's a lot of a lots. Uh, there is this really fresh feeling, and I'm glad we did go back to July 31st because that new moon not being an eclipse really does break the pattern of the eclipse energy. And the fact that Mercury stationing direct, as the last planet, like the last man standing in the Cancer Capricorn axis, from the temporary planets, it really feels like when we get to August 1st, there's just so much freshness coming through.
definitely. So emerging from a turbulent period where there's like a lot of tension, a lot of delays, and a lot of, for some people, like important or pivotal turning points, and both important new beginnings as well as some significant endings. Yeah, and then emerging out into a fresh new cycle of lunations and a fresh new cycle of Mercury moving forward and no longer being in that phase of like delays, but instead coming out the other end and sort of rectifying that which had gone awry previously.
Yeah, literally being in the position where the much delayed whatever is finally arriving, whether it's your book or Kelly's packages, right? Mercury
Yeah,
is moving forward again.
thank goodness.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to that book, and I hope it is not upside down and backwards this time. If it's just like backwards or one of them, I'll be fine with it. But if it's both upside down and backwards, that's a little too much.
That's just classic. And may the dishwasher repairman arrive with the right equipment.
Yes. Yes, if God wills. It's worth noting, though, this isn't. Although there are some new and fresh things, we also have, we also have Venus at the very in most traditional or most
Mm,
historical argue the authors would say at the very end of Venus's cycle.
yeah.
Venus is no longer the morning star, nor has Venus risen as the evening star. We have an invisible Venus all month, and Mars is also just barely visible, if at all month. And so part of Venus and Mars traveling through Leo with the Sun is them being under the beams or properly combust pretty much all month. And so this is I was thinking about this last night. It's sort of like coming out of whatever the gauntlet or wormhole that the last 2 months have outlined for us. There are some things which need to change. It's an end and the beginning of a new cycle, which is what Venus is in this case superior conjunction to the Sun which is pending all month and is perfect in the middle of the month. But Venus is being burnt up, as is Mars, right? And so that's the burning up of one cycle and the seeding of a new cycle. And this new cycle with Venus gets seeded in the solar fire of Leo. And so a lot of people are going to see relational patterns changing, or relational patterns sort of getting done and then needing to be, seeded or renegotiated. That combustion of Venus isn't always super pleasant, especially when Venus is going into combustion. It's not like an out and out malefic party like some of what we've been seeing. But it's coming up on a transition point in terms of how we relate to things and people.
Yeah, and it looks like that goes exact. August 14th is the exact Sun Venus conjunction at 21 degrees and 11 minutes of Leo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just before the full moon in Aquarius. And it's a really great point that you're making there, Austin, because, Venus invisible, it's quite a few weeks. I think it's about 6 weeks that she's invisible, is it? Between the switch from AM to PM star. And it does sort of have these subtle themes of introspection, reflection, that kind of quiet inner space without the heaviness of what we've had in June and July. But there is something hasn't, become visible yet, if you like. I think we've got to wait till September for that.
Yeah, and this is so Venus conjoins the Sun like Mercury in two different circumstances. One is the retrograde circumstance in which Venus is between us and the Sun, and then the circumstance that we're coming up on in August is when Venus is on the far side of the Sun, and we're often referred to as the superior conjunction. And so whereas the point where Venus is between us and the Sun, the retrograde, is deeply personal, right? It's close. This is literally the opposite point in the cycle, where we're as far away from Venus as we get, and the Sun is between us and Venus. And so there is this part of the cycle favors, rather than the personal, the universal significations of Venus, right? Like, love not the chocolate cake, but love God.
That's great. So that's the start of the month.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's the entire month.
Well, no, but we were just talking about the July 31st stuff as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
So one of the things I love about the beginning of August, especially for electional purposes, is that for so long everything was moving through Cancer, and all the inner planets were moving through Cancer, like the Sun and Mercury and Venus, and also Mars. And so everything was getting caught up in, of course, we had the eclipses in Cancer and Capricorn, but also while everything was going through those signs, it was getting caught up in this opposition between Saturn and Pluto in the South Node in Capricorn, and then Mars opposing that from Cancer. So this Mars, Saturn, Pluto opposition that was bouncing back and forth for most of June and July. And Jupiter over in Sagittarius, which has been retrograde for a while, was just like completely not involved in that party at all, because it was over in Sagittarius, which doesn't really aspect Cancer and doesn't form a major aspect with Capricorn. So one of the things that's really beautiful about August is at the very top of the month, as soon as everything starts moving into Leo, it starts moving into these trines with Jupiter, which is just a really breath of fresh air compared to the really tense oppositions that we were dealing with between Mars and Saturn for most of the past couple of months. And I think that's what I'm looking forward to the most, is not just everything being in Leo and everything and having that sense of starting a new cycle with the new moon there, or with Mercury stationing direct, but just this pattern that we're going to see, especially in the first week or two of August, of everything moving into this exact trine with Jupiter at 14 degrees-ish of Sag.
Yeah, and not only that, but it's as Jupiter stations direct. Which we like.
Definitely.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, and the first of those aspects kicks off on August 7 with the Sun forming the trine to Jupiter. And I know there's other things going on, but the sun in dignity, Jupiter in dignity, so close to stationing direct. There's a real sense of, I don't know, hope, optimism, perspective, possibility. It's the feeling I keep getting is this sense of looking to a far off horizon and feeling as though you could give that a shot. You're not necessarily going to do it all this week, but the feeling of these aspects as they come through and trine Jupiter is just more, I don't know, movement oriented, or there is that upbeat quality, which we just have not had for such a long time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very much a rekindling of the heroic and far-seeing spirit,
Yeah.
right? Emerging from the tunnel and, looking out and saying, looking out to perhaps the longer term goals, which got temporarily occluded by the short term difficulties which needed to be navigated recently. It's like, oh yeah, this is what I'm doing with my life. This is where I'm going, looking to the horizon and remembering at what point you want to be on that horizon. And, and I think we can contextualize the Venus Mars combustions within that, right? And that, some of there needs to be, because Venus and Mars are much more personal than the Sun and Jupiter, right? They're night planets, they're personal, they're relational. And so while the diurnal and more objective planets, the Sun and Jupiter, are looking out to the horizon saying, I want to be this, I want to do this, it necessitates a bit of a gear change on the personal level with Venus and Mars, right? We have to
Totally.
orient emotionally.
Yeah, I like that. The optimism of the new is, I think, the keyword I'm getting from that in terms of having the newness of some of those cycles, the new moon in Leo, trine Jupiter, Mercury stationing direct, and then also Venus starting a new cycle in respect to its phase relationship with the sun, and the optimism that comes with starting out a journey fresh versus the opposite scenario of like when you're already winding down a long journey.
Yeah, I would I guess I see it as getting back to the journey that
Yeah.
we've been on all year, which is going to feel refreshing and new, but it's like, oh yeah, this is what I was doing, right? Because this is Jupiter stations direct, and this is Jupiter in a this is the evening Jupiter phase rather than the morning Jupiter phase, which we had December through, let's say, April last year. And so this is we've had Jupiter in Sag for a while. We've been aspiring. Things got complicated, but this is the like back to the journey, back to the quest, back to the mission. Which can feel like waking up out of out of a very confusing set of dreams. And just on a more macro timing level. So we have until December to Jupiter and Sag, right?
Yes.
We've got several months left. We can still do it. The things which haven't quite gotten done, which we wanted to do, like, we've got time. And this is remembering that.
Remind yourself, because it's like go big or go home between now and December with anything Jupiter and Sag related.
Well, and what's nice now in this part of the year, now we're going to have Jupiter direct again, which we haven't had for several months. And also over the course of the past month or so, with the Sagittarius rising charts where Jupiter's in the first house and it's the ruler of the Ascendant, ever since the sun moved into like the later part of Gemini, we've been able to get Sagittarius rising charts as day charts. And I've really noticed the qualitative difference where some of those Sagittarius rising elections have just been hitting really well over the course of the past month or so. I've really been enjoying seeing how well that works out and realizing that part of the difference there is probably that switch in sect, where for several months earlier this year, you could do Sagittarius rising charts, but they were night charts, so that Jupiter was contrary to the sect and it wasn't quite as positive or quite as benefic as it could be. But that shift over the course of the past month or month and a half has been really noticeable to me in terms of starting different things and using Sag rising charts for elections.
Yeah, that's great. And that's that's where you see some of the for example, some of the synodic details where you're like, oh yeah, that's the evening Jupiter, and you're like, yeah, I guess, but you can see it during the day. Try to find Jupiter rising, and try to find a chart with Jupiter rising. You're like, oh, the sun's below the horizon for months and months.
Right.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, that brings us, and I might as well introduce at this point, our one auspicious electional chart. So the most auspicious electional chart that we could find for the month of August. And this was found by Lisa Scheim. We actually found this way back in like December when we did the 2019 yearly report, where we tried to find the best electional chart we could for each month of the year. And this is the one that really stood out as like the best chart in August. And I think all the astrologers are going to be, this is going to be one of those days where I noticed in social media over the past year or two where suddenly you mysteriously see like all the astrologers scrambling to announce and like mysteriously launching new projects all on the same day. I think this is going to be one of those days because this chart just stands out as so positive and so auspicious. So this is the chart that Lisa came up with. It's for August 9th, 2019, at roughly around 3:40 p.m., let's say, local time. So whatever city you're in, set the chart around 3:40 p.m. and adjust it so that the ascendant is in around the middle degrees of Sagittarius. So what you'll end up with is a chart that has Sagittarius rising, and Jupiter is in Sagittarius in the first house, and Jupiter is actually only about a day and a half from stationing direct. So for all intents and purposes, this is a stationary Jupiter that's stationing direct and beginning to move forward. This is a day chart, so Jupiter is of the second favor and is fully benefic. It's in its own domicile. It's ruling the first and the fourth houses. And we find the moon there with Jupiter at around, at least in our time zone, around 13 degrees of Sagittarius, applying to a conjunction with Jupiter. So this is really just one of the best Jupiter charts of the year in terms of taking advantage of Jupiter moving through Sagittarius and being in its home sign. This is one of the best charts where you can really squeeze the most out of that, just in terms of ticking off all of the possible boxes of what you would look for a great Jupiter electional chart. It also has some other positive things, like Venus is over at 15 degrees of Leo, so it's trining the moon and Jupiter pretty closely. It's not a terrible chart for financial matters. It has Saturn in its own domicile in a day chart in the second whole sign house. So not potentially going to be good very quickly, but especially in the long term, financial matters might be decent with this chart. Not a great chart to some extent for ninth house matters like travel, with Mars in the ninth whole sign house in a day chart, although even that's a little bit negotiable or a little bit mitigated because the Sun and Venus are there in the ninth, and the Sun is trining Jupiter as the ruler of the ninth house. So it's like there's a difficult planet in the house, but the ruler is doing somewhat okay, so it's a little bit mixed. Finally, Mercury is direct, and it's in the eighth house. We tried to mitigate it because it's in the eighth house by in our location making it so the degree of the midheaven was at 27 degrees of Virgo, sextiling Mercury, which helps it out of that eighth house position to not manifest in the more challenging ways, but instead to be a bit more constructive. So with this chart, we'd recommend just setting it for anywhere in Sagittarius rising in your location and trying to get the midheaven so that it's aspecting Mercury within 3 degrees in order to mitigate that eighth house placement. And that is our electional chart for the month of August. We found 3 or 4 other electional charts that we recorded for an episode of the Auspicious Elections podcast, which I'm releasing to patrons through our page on Patreon later today, I believe. So if you want to get the other electional charts, you just have to subscribe to that on the $5 or $10 tier, and you'll get access immediately. So had you guys already seen this electional chart?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a good one.
I think pretty much all the astrologers have. This is actually going to be, like Ben Dykes has a new book coming out, which is a translation of Abu Mashar's full work on solar returns from the Arabic. It's a big, thick book. I actually got a pre-publication copy right here that I'm reading because we're going to do an interview about that, and then we're going to release both the book is going to be published and we're going to release the interview simultaneously on this date on August 9th. So that is something to look forward to, and that's already like one instance of astrologers like doing something major on this electional chart.
That's lovely. I'll be on holidays in Paris on this
Very
week.
nice.
Nice.
Yeah. Which was a totally random thing. My girlfriend from Australia is going to be in England for a wedding, and she's like, well, I'll come and visit you guys. And I'm like, okay, I'll take a few days off work. And where do you want to go? And she's like, I can go to Paris any day of the week and twice on Sundays. I'm like, let's go to Paris. So we might be out in the world, but I'm sure I'll have things scheduled. So you can have, yeah. But I'm sure, and Austin, you don't want to say anything about stuff you guys might have up your sleeve?
Well, I am starting my astrology and tarot class right around here.
Oh,
You're doing
it on the 8th.
Yeah.
Which is still Moon and Jupiter and such.
Yeah, and I meant to mention, Lisa asked me to mention, so it's a good reminder that for some people, if you're living, there may be certain time zones where you can't get the moon still applying to Jupiter. And if the moon's separating from Jupiter, just back the chart up by a day. And for some people, you can do August 8th around the same time period with Sagittarius rising, and the moon will still be in Sag, still applying to that conjunction with Jupiter, just a little bit more widely.
Well, yeah, and that's on a Thursday too, which just gives it a nice little boost.
Jupiter's day.
Yeah,
yep, it's a nice pair of days.
I see what you did there, Austin.
Oh yeah, Kelly's picking up on the subtle planetary days that Austin is dropping. Okay. So this is the beginning of August. It's just everything moving through Leo, everything trining Jupiter, Jupiter stationing direct, and everything being good. We have the lunation, of course. We have that first lunation we mentioned, which is the new moon in Leo at the very top of the month. Mercury in moving direct finally gets out of Cancer, which is almost amazing.
That's that's like the end, the absolute end of the hangover of the meat grinder, I think.
That is the final last gasp of the meat grinder is Mercury moving out of Cancer and moving into Leo.
Yeah, there's a little digging out after Mercury's direct for that first week or so. Which is even though it may be dealing with the same topics that July's retrograde dealt with, it'll be on the solution side rather than the like, oh no, not this again. It'll be like, oh, and that's finally fixed. And oh, whatever, the dishwasher man finally came, or oh, the new desk I ordered is finally here, or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because it looks like all the way until about August 14th, August 15th, that's about how long it takes before Mercury leaves its shadow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it originally stationed retrograde at 4 degrees of Leo conjunct Mars. So it'll finally return back to that point, and then we'll complete that entire sort of sequence of events around August 14th, August 15th, which interestingly and curiously is also right about the same time as that Sun-Venus conjunction we were talking about earlier, and the full moon in Aquarius, which looks like it takes place at about, 22 degrees of Aquarius?
22, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. So that is our second lunation of the month, is the full moon in Aquarius. So that's a pivotal turning point this month, right in the middle of the month, around August 14th, August 15th, that full moon in Aquarius, Mercury completing and leaving its shadow and completing the full retrograde cycle, and then finally the Sun-Venus conjunction.
Yeah,
that's a big one. Okay. All right. Well, that looks good.
I was going to say it's a relatively benign full moon too. When you think back to the last full moon we had being the eclipse, this one, of course, is off axis to anything happening in Saturn with Capricorn. Sorry, so it's just a little bit of full moons can still be a little emotional, but this one is, relatively benign. Yeah, definitely. And it looks like Uranus is just stationed retrograde at 6 degrees of Taurus as well around August 12th. So that's as far as Uranus is going to get in this pass, is up to about 6.5 degrees of Taurus before it stations retrograde here and begins moving back to the earlier degrees of Taurus over the course of the next few months. Yes, it's going to come all the way back to 2 degrees at the end of the year or early Jan. 2, okay. Yeah, so there is a little shift with Uranus going retrograde this month. So those of us with stuff more towards the middle of fixed signs can breathe a sigh of relief that that's as far as it gets on this path. But
next year, early next year, it's going to get further than that.
Yes.
Yeah, and those of us with planets at 2 fixed can go back to gritting our teeth.
Yeah.
And those of us with planets at 0 fixed are like, it's so funny. But I mean, you see this even with client work too. It's like, oh, you're in this band, so you're on the 2020 Uranus track, or you're on the 2022 Uranus track, basically, just depending on where in the fixed signs, how far into it your planets are.
Yeah. When is Uranus going to station closely conjunct or squaring or opposing your planets by degree?
Yeah.
Well, and I treat, because of Uranus's sort of broad wiping through the years, Uranus transits are, they're 1.5 2-year long
Mhm.
phases, because it's like, if you look at a given chart and be like, oh, it's 5 degrees away. And then you look 6 months later and you're like, oh, it's 1 degree before the planet rather than after it.
Yeah.
They're much more like phases than they are moments. It's not like, like with our meat grinder, for example, it's like, that's not going to happen again.
Mm-mm.
Right. That was a brief pileup of things. Whereas Uranus will just kind of, I was going to say lazily wipe back and forth, but it's not really
Nothing lazy about
is it?
Uranus. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, especially if somebody has something at like, if like your sun is at like 6 degrees of Taurus or something like that. I mean, if it's stationing right on top of some personal planet, that could be a turning point when the planet does station.
Yeah, but it's a turning point within a longer process, because if it stations
Right.
at 6, it's probably going to come back a couple more times.
Yeah, it's back at 6 in April 2020 and again later in the year, like December 2020, January 2021.
Nice eye. That was quick.
Well, that I have been doing consults over the last little while. So, yeah. And that's what you mean about a phase, Austin, is it does, it's building you into it, and maybe you get a pause, but then you're coming back because it's not something that you're done with just in a couple of months.
Yeah, it's much like the eclipses in
Yeah.
the sense that, yes, that's an eclipse on your rising or whatever, but it's one of a series that's going to run for 1.5 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny, you do see there are certain degrees that get the 1.5 years, and there are some degrees that just get the 9-month Uranus transit if there's no station involvement, basically. Sorry, Chris, I cut you off there.
I was just going to say that was something that came up with the eclipse workshop that we did earlier this month, which is just, while sometimes there's a pivotal event or turning point that coincides with an astrological transit of some sort or an activation, oftentimes so much of timing in astrology has to do with cycles and like periods of transition and change, which rarely happen overnight. Usually there's like it's like a process oriented, or timing in astrology is process oriented. And that's why it's so important to like talk with a client about the sequence of events during different parts of their life and what they were going through during that time. And there's this interesting like process that's involved in feedback, which helps you to sharpen your understanding as the astrologer and be able to get into more specifics by having this sort of dialogue with them about processes that they were going through during different time periods.
Definitely.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I mean, I do want to give a shout out to all of our listeners who have their moons in the middle of the cardinal signs, who are getting the Saturn transits. I've just had a number of clients recently that have got moons at like 15, 16 of Aries, Libra, Cancer, Capricorn, that are getting very heavily triggered by Saturn. But that's very specific to that part of the sky for 2019.
Yeah. They get
Definitely.
to hand that baton off shortly.
Yeah.
All right, so let's transition into the second half of the month. We have
You'd
the
like
Sun
to
Venus
put the Virgo
conjunction.
hat on?
Yeah, it's time to get into the details. So Sun Venus conjunction on the 14th, full moon in Aquarius on the 15th. Then we transition. There's like a very stark difference between like the first half of the month and the second half, because we get our first change when Mars moves out of Leo and ingresses into Virgo on August 18th. And that's the first in like a series of planets that all then pile up and move very close, roughly around the same time, from Leo into Virgo.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the Virgo week. Mars, Venus, the Sun. There's just so much. We're going to have all the personal planets by the time we get to the new moon in Virgo. All of the personal planets are in Virgo for a couple of days at the end of the month. So it's a
Right.
cooling down, the qualities of Leo being hot and dry versus the qualities of Virgo being cold and dry. There's still the dryness. So there's still that, potential for order or organization, which of course is associated with the sign of Virgo, but it is associated with the dry quality. So that's going to intensify. But I think if you're finding the excess of fire stuff or the excess of Jupiter in the first half of the month a little extra or a little too much, then when we get to this Virgo period in the second half of the month, there will just be like a turning down the heat or turning down the temperature, which can allow you to slow the pace down a little bit. I don't know if you guys
Sure, yeah.
disagree or see.
No, I mean, that definitely makes sense. And for some people, it depend, like, is your chart more fixed sign heavy, in which case the Leo stuff is maybe going to be the more active part of the month for you, versus once it moves into Virgo, things are going to calm down, versus if you have much more mutable chart, if mutable signs are more heavy emphasized in your chart, like Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces, then everything moving into Virgo is going to be potentially like an amping up of things becoming more active for you in the second part of the month.
Yeah, I don't really associate Virgo with calm or slow.
No, but
You don't?
it's not calm for sure, because it's potentially highly anxious or highly like excessive thinking. But it
There's a
just
lot to
seems
do.
there's a lot to do, but it's more like in a measured, planned way relative to the way that Leo fire
Sure, right.
would go about it, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's definitely more fact and task oriented.
Mm. Yeah, the word
So,
I've been using when I've been looking at August for my monthly subscribers is productive. It's time to turbocharge productivity to get the most done in the most efficient way.
Yeah, to drill down.
Yeah.
Yeah, Leo,
yeah,
with that solar, if we're talking about how the sun gets things done, it's the sun delegates and describes like how should we say, almost like CEO style, like we're
Yeah.
moving in this direction. There's a lot of, like we were talking about earlier, there's a lot of like vision and direction between the sun and Jupiter during the Leo portion. But then the Virgo is like is logistics, right? Like, and how does this get done,
Yeah.
and have all the things on the list gotten done?
Yes. And who's doing them and in what order? And do we have the
Yep.
tools? And can we make the system more efficient? And what's the process? Yeah. And I always think too, when Mars changes signs, we only get Mars in each zodiac sign once every 2 years. So, this Mars in Virgo piece, which is sort of a bit extra on the annual Sun, Virgo, Mercury, Sun, Mercury and Venus in Virgo. It's a sort of a more unique thing to have Mars in Virgo. It's not a game changer, but it's a little bit more, let's tackle this part of our chart, for instance, wherever your Virgo house is. We need to make decisions. We need to get some things done here.
Yeah, absolutely.
definitely. So it looks like, we've got the 18th for Mars going into Virgo, then Venus goes into Virgo on the 21st. And shortly after that, we have the Sun, of course, making its annual ingress into Virgo on the 23rd of August. And then eventually Mercury catches up right about the same time that the Moon does. And Mercury goes into Virgo on the 29th of August. And then the Moon follows suit shortly after that. And the very next day, on August 30th, we have our last lunation of the month, which is a new moon at 6 degrees of Virgo. So we have what is unquestionably a large stellium in Virgo of 5 planets.
A very Virgo 48 hours.
Yes, indeed.
And the way, because you're right, Chris, like Mercury goes into Virgo and the moon comes in after. So we're going to have a moon Mercury conjunction in Virgo. Of course, we have the moon Sun, that's the new moon, but then we'll also get a moon Venus and a moon Mars conjunction in Virgo. So it's a very active 48 hours with the moon just triggering all those planets there.
Yeah. Really activating them quite nicely. So that's pretty cool looking then. We got a big emphasis on Virgo and Mercury really completing that whole thing by returning to its home sign at that point and moving direct, not retrograde. It's not going to go retrograde in Virgo this month.
No.
Uh, so that's nice.
One other little mention, just a little extra for this week, because Uranus has stationed retrograde at 6 Taurus, this last week of August has a series of trines from the planets hitting 6 Virgo to just trine Uranus in Taurus. So we get, like, Monday we have Venus trine Uranus, Wednesday we have Mars, Thursday we have the Sun, and then the new moon itself will be in trine to Uranus. So there is a very, I know it seems almost incongruous to put Virgo and Uranus in the same sentence in the way the symbols of that sign and that planet work, but there is a lot of activity tying Taurus and Virgo together in that last week of August.
That's a really good point, and I like that because that's actually different than something we skipped over a little bit about. The nice thing about everything going into Leo and then trining Jupiter is we kind of skipped the part where like everything has to go through a square with Uranus in Taurus first while it's going through early Leo. Whereas in the second half of the month, when everything starts moving into Virgo, we get these nice trines between the Virgo planets and Uranus in early Taurus.
Yeah.
Certainly less disruptive and more like innovative or more creative in a positive way.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how that stimulates things. Like Uranus can help the Virgo over analytical like get moving, but the planets in Virgo can kind of say, well, if you want me to throw things up in the air, we need an outcome. We need some sort of output that we can say the chaos we've created was worth it or it led to something.
Right.
Yeah, I think with those trines, there's going to be a lot of executing on big changes that were decided earlier in the year with Uranus in Taurus, or cleaning up big changes that happened earlier in the year.
Yeah, I like the cleanup because I think that it's like cleaning up with a twist or doing it in a way that you hadn't expected, but is maybe better than you could have planned.
Yeah, or maybe.
Or maybe not. Maybe it's just a bit. It feels like a lot of stimulation that week.
Yeah, well, there's to a certain degree with Uranus, we do experiments
Yeah.
where whether we call them experiments or not, we make a change and we don't know exactly what the outcome is going to be. We take a leap, and then we deal with the data coming in from making those changes. And those Virgo planets are well placed to clean up where it needs to be cleaned up, or make adjustments, or build in or course correct, or whatever. Like the Mercury ruledness of Virgo makes it in many ways, to my mind, very compatible with Uranus. To a certain degree, Uranus is the mad scientist and Mercury is the lab tech, that knows how how to categorize the results.
I love it. So it's a pretty
Yeah.
interesting end to the month.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice end to the month. I mean, all of this is much quieter in some ways than what we're coming out of, or at least a little bit less dramatic, a little bit less tension, even if occasionally we run into stuff like the Uranus squares between the early Leo planets and Uranus, or Uranus stationing direct around the same time, and some of the sort of unexpected disruptions that may bring. Yeah, it's otherwise nice moving into somewhat quieter period of the year.
Yeah, in many ways, it's more, again, there's sort of a personal, invisible gear change, because Venus and Mars are pretty much invisible this whole month.
Whole month.
You can maybe see a little edge of Mars at the beginning of the month, but Mars isn't very bright, so it's going to be basically invisible the whole month. So is Venus. And then by the end of the month, Mercury will also have joined Venus and Mars in invisibility. And so, we have all those personal planets, hidden beneath the golden skirts of the sun. And so Jupiter is bright and direct, and Uranus is stationing. But part of this clustering with the sun means that everything is beneath the veil. It's a little busy underneath, but a little quieter on the outside.
definitely.
Yeah, like a duck. Busy feet, calm on top.
So
Should that be the title of this episode?
like
Maybe.
sorry,
Okay.
what was the duck analogy?
So with the duck, they often say they look like they're just, calmly meandering through the water, but their little feet are paddling like crazy underneath to keep them moving.
I like
That's
that.
hilarious. Okay. I didn't imagine a duck in water. I just imagined a duck and tried to find the hidden action.
Yeah, on the water. How they create them. Yeah, they look calm, but busy underneath.
What should my title for this episode be? Usually I can only fit like one thing in, like Mercury retrograde in Leo or something, I think was one of the last ones, or eclipses in Cancer Capricorn. Is there a single thing I can focus on, even if that's just one piece of what we actually ended up talking about?
You could do Jupiter station direct or Sun trine Jupiter, and you could stick a word like luck or abundance or growth or progress in there if you want to go on the positive. But Austin usually has really witty. I mean, he came up with the meat grinder.
All right. Jupiter direct.
Austin sometimes has good things. It happens. Kate recommends to me the light at the end.
You cannot.
the light at the end of the sausage casing.
Okay. I like that. That's very.
I mean, it made me laugh, but I don't think that's going in the search engine.
Yeah, it's not going to check off the search engine optimization boxes that I'm looking for. But maybe it can be like a subtitle.
I don't know. I mean, the main thing, I think stelliums, that's the one thing that's true all month.
That's common.
Stelliums,
that's a great word.
That.
Yeah.
Leo and Virgo stelliums.
That's great.
Good. Yeah. I mean,
like that.
Because, the sun always goes from Leo to Virgo during this period of time, but the weight of Leo and then Virgo is greatly enhanced this year, right? It's like all the Leo, all the Virgo.
Well, and I guess that's what I was trying to say earlier with the Mars involvement is that, Mars is only there once every couple of years, and Mars isn't always in a sign when the sun is there too. So it just feels like this double amp up, both for Leo and for Virgo this year.
Right. One, and, wherever Mars goes, that's where the battle is, right? That's where the work is. It's like, okay, there's, that's where the call to action is.
Yeah, 6 weeks of we got to work this. We got to make decisions. We got to do stuff. We can't faff around. We've got 6 weeks and we don't get it again for 2 years. So no faffing.
Which is in some cases a blessing, but
totally.
Well, and again, on a slightly longer term scale, this is the second half of the year. The meat grinder was really it happened to be the middle time wise, but it was also a dynamic that really separated first half and second half. And first half had its challenges, second half has its challenges, but you have basically 4 more months of Jupiter and Sag. Right.
Yeah, have at it.
And then, the December is back into Capricorn land.
Right. I was just looking, that's when the next set of eclipses takes place, as we get that solar eclipse on the 26th of December.
Oh, it's the 25th in our time zone. It's Christmas Day.
It depends the time zones, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We get that eclipse Christmas goose.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then just everything's in Capricorn.
Yeah. And in many ways, it's almost like 2019, or how should we say, the workable portion of 2019 ends the first week of December. And then we're in a transitional period where everything's in Capricorn. And then we get 2020's shape coming out. But this is the second half, like whatever you haven't got to, whatever you want to get done. Like this is there's a little bit of head down, endure, do what needs to be done during this last 2 months. And now we're beginning, okay, now it's time to make progress again, get to where you need to get to, come back to your plans, click into phase 3. It's good. It's workable.
Yeah. Definitely. There's a lot that you can do between now and that first week of December.
Yeah. And, no Mercury retrograde until November, no Venus retrogrades. There's nothing, there's this and that.
That seems like a long time. That's fantastic. You're right.
Well, it's because
Yeah.
we're not even done with Mercury's still retrograde
That's
as
true.
we
I
speak.
know. I'm like,
You know?
there's been so much going on that I was like, oh my God, it is still retrograde. Yeah. It sort of feels like it's been retrograde forever, but
It does.
that's it. That's not just me. Oh my Lord, that's so interesting. But it's a chilled month, August. Like it's very different from June, July. So if you had a rough couple of months, there's a whole different there's a whole different set of sky patterns coming through for August.
Yeah, and like you said with it, with just the elemental qualities of being hot, the nice way to say hot is warm.
Yeah, but it's hot right now.
Yeah, but there's also just some warmth on
That's
an
true. Oh yeah,
on
I
an
beg your
emotional
pardon.
level, on like a spirit level, especially
Yeah.
with Jupiter. You know, Jupiter and Sag brings us that temperate,
Temperate.
inspiring warmth.
Yeah.
And you know, there even though it's been hot out, it's been a little. I think for some people it's been frosty on an emotional level. It's like, okay, just cage up and get through it. And so there's that Leo stuff it's it's warming on an internal level, which will be nice, kind of getting back to the heart, because sometimes you can't be heart centered, you have to be task centered, right?
Yeah, no, that's actually, I misunderstood where you were going with that, Austin. And absolutely, the warmth. I think I was talking with a couple of girlfriends, like as soon as the sun went into Leo, you could start to feel just a little bit of that radiance coming in and just the improvements began, even though we're still dealing with some circumstances that are stressful.
Yeah, I could feel that. I was like, oh, that's good.
Yeah, that's nice.
More of that, please.
Yes, I'd like a second helping. Not to be greedy, but I'll take it.
All right. I think that kind of brings us to the end of the forecast then, which I'm genuinely shocked by because we're only an hour and 30 minutes into this recording. So somehow we've done a sub 2-hour episode for probably the first time in like 2 or 3 years.
Ever. I mean, I did notice when I was putting my month together for August, there are just fewer astrological aspects happening, I think, this month as well. So in addition to them having a nicer or more uplifting, or, we can access them because there's more of that personal tone, there are just less things going on.
Yeah, and the things that do happen are not extremely complicated.
No, it's like this little thing will square that, 48 hours done, or this thing's going to try and that, feel good, or whatever it happens to be.
Right. And it's like, oh, where are the planets? They're in Leo and then they're in Virgo.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. All right. Well.
So it is possible. We have shown that it is possible.
Yeah. Are there any other like astrology related things or things that have happened in the community then worth mentioning or talking about briefly as we wrap things up?
I have a tiny little personal thing that's astro.
Sure.
I did get invited back to speak at NORWAC in 2020, so I'll be attending that conference, which will be it won't be as big as ESAR, it'll be on the other side of the country, but I know for some people that'll be a little bit more doable. So that'll be end of May in Seattle, 2020.
Awesome.
Yeah, me too.
And Austin,
Oh, you did?
Also...
Yay!
Yeah, I'll actually be giving a couple talks in a workshop there.
Fantastic. You're giving a workshop. Brilliant.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm going to do, if I've got people for that long, I think we're going to do all of the decans.
Yeah.
And then some fun things you can do with decans.
Fantastic.
I was looking through, as I was packing my books, oh God, what was it? It was Rhetorius. Rhetorius has a section that is simply on what, which decans, if you have Venus in them, make you a horrible, lustful monster. And that's literally that's all it is. It's these decans under these conditions, and you will be a lust monster of short description. And I was
my gosh,
you are going in 36 Spaces Volume 2.
Volume 2.
I will of course include, if I do end up doing that as a workshop. I couldn't leave out the lust monster placements.
Oh, that sounds super interesting, Austin. I'm also doing a workshop, so I hope we're on at different times because I'd love to hear you for that long on the decans. That'd be amazing.
It'll be fun. It'll just, let's do all 36 and then talk about
Yeah.
what we can do with them. I've done that
Fantastic.
once before as a workshop, and it was a lot of fun.
Fantastic.
And I'm excited about our workshop at the ESAR conference, which is going to be a pre-conference that Wednesday. And we're going to do, I think, a variation of this workshop I've wanted to do, the three of us, for a long time. And Austin and I did a test run at NORWAC, which is synthesizing modern and ancient astrology. And I think we did a pretty good job of getting a feel for how that would go when you and I did it, Austin. But this time I want to make it bigger and better and add more visuals and have a lot more diagrams and stuff to show. And I think bringing you and Kelly is really going to complete the trifecta so that we can create the new synthesis that surely all astrologers will then adopt and start practicing over the next century.
I'm excited to teach with you guys. We've been talking about it for such a long time, and I'm so happy that we're able to do it at a conference where we can have so many people joining us. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. No, it'll be great to take what we learned from the first time and expand on this and do less of this and add a visual for that, because it was huge and exploratory. And I enjoyed it very much. But there, it's a slightly ambitious topic, Chris.
Slightly. I mean, if
we're
that's...
going to have to put some parameters in place to make it manageable, I think, for me as the presenter. Because I was like, how are you guys impressed me so much with how you get through so much material.
Yeah, we covered a lot, so we'll have to work on that, but we've got a year to get it together, and I think we can pull it off.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of other fun social media things. There's one that's happening right now over the past few days on Twitter, and this was started by, I think it was started by Shakira Toborn,
who was on the call earlier, or maybe she's still here.
Maybe she's still here. Are you still here, Shakira? So she started a thing where she recorded a video of herself writing out the astrological glyphs on a piece of paper, and now a bunch of people are doing the same and posting how they write the glyphs, because while there's obviously a standardization, there's also a lot of variation in just how exactly you can write them out. But I really love this because this is one of the first things that I feel like every astrologer should do is memorize and learn how to write the symbols for the planets and the signs of the zodiac.
Well, yeah, and I want to say, Austin, you and I have given a lot of love to the Mercury-Venus aspect as an artistic signature in previous episodes. And this happened on the Mercury retrograde conjunct Venus aspect. It was Wednesday, I think, of last week, or just a few days ago. This week. I don't even know what week it is, but it was beautiful. And I was watching everyone. I'm like, everyone's doing this so precise and so small. Like they were writing the glyphs and videoing. I think Shakira, we need to maybe put her Twitter handle or something. And she said it's totally by accident. And I was like, if I drew them, mine are really big and messy. I couldn't do it. So it's the astrology without the A. It was great. And then everybody was retweeting. Did you get something off? There we go.
So at the astrology _ and yeah, she's here right now joining us for the live version of this recording, she says it happened during the Mercury and Venus conjunction on Wednesday, but totally by accident. Yeah. So you weren't going out of your way to do that, but then suddenly everybody was doing it and showing their approaches, which I've really loved seeing. So
yeah, and then different people, the way they put the symbols together, I was like, I never thought to draw that symbol in that way. And it was just really interesting seeing different people's writing styles. Somebody wrote Taurus without taking the pen off, not as two different symbols, but in one weird little roundabout. Anyway, it was very interesting to see. I'm glad we had time to mention this tonight. Good memory, Chris.
Yeah, I love that. There's always little things like that happening at different points on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, but it's fun to highlight so people can check it out and join in and maybe post their own versions of a video of how they write the glyphs. I
was wondering if there's any way. I'm like, the three of us should have done in the show, but we're not really set up for this.
Well, I actually have an old one that I did 9 or 10 years ago, which is one of my first YouTube videos. Because what was funny about that is I was talking to Lisa and she said that she didn't know how to write the glyphs and she'd been studying astrology for several years, but it just was something she'd never done. So I realized that some people actually can get to more advanced stage in their studies. And if you don't do it early on, sometimes you just don't end up doing it. So I actually did a little video where I demonstrated on like a whiteboard like my approach to doing them. So if you don't know how to draw the glyphs yet, just do a Google search for how to draw astrological symbols or glyphs for zodiac signs and planets, and you'll see my little version of like how I write the glyphs, at least as of 2010 or something like that.
Yeah. It is. It's funny. I remember, every time I've taught a beginner or an intro class, it's usually part of an assignment in the first few weeks. And I think I agree that it's very important to learn to do, because these are the letters in the alphabet that you're going to use to communicate and express yourself for probably forever once you learn them. I just thought the astrology of this going sort of semi-viral on Twitter was just amazing with that Mercury Venus conjunction.
Yeah, that's such a good catch.
Right? And it just happened. And as Shakira's saying, it wasn't intentional. I guess she just got inspired and was picking up on something in the others at the time.
Yeah, I love that. And I'll put a link to that in the description page for this episode on the Astrology Podcast website, to that thread on her Twitter page, so people can like respond or post their own versions in response to it or what have you.
Oh, she's saying she's in a Mercury perfection year as well.
Okay, nice.
Which is great.
Yeah.
That's an episode I've been meaning to do for a while. As soon as I can get Alan Oken, I've been trying to get Alan Oken to do an episode with me, because he has this really good treatment. I don't know if it's historically valid in terms of how the glyphs actually came about, but in his Intro to Astrology book, which was one of my first books, Alan Oken's Complete Astrology, I think that's the title, he talks about like the symbolism for the glyphs and what they mean, or what the deeper meaning is supposed to be behind the glyphs. And I always thought that was really interesting treatment. So one of these days, I hope that this is a reminder to me that I've always meant to do that episode with him.
That'd be really good.
Yeah, but he lives somewhere remote, and it's hard to get him like good internet access and a microphone and stuff like that.
Doesn't he live in Portugal?
I was going to say he's not. Yeah.
No, he teaches like at a major astrology school in Portugal, but he lives in like Bali, but like some really remote part of like Indonesia or something.
Okay.
Yeah, so one of these days I'll get him. And yeah. You guys got any other topics? Did anything else funny come up this month? Social media, astrology.
I love drawing a blank. Crickets.
You've both been moving, so
yeah. I mean, the cardboard boxes that the cast just knocked over in the middle of the show have been there for 10 days and they haven't touched them. But of course, tonight, while we're recording, bang. Just crazy.
Podcast episodes this month, I did one about how there's the increasing frequency of cesarean section births. I don't know if you guys saw that, but
I saw it come up. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, we're just moving to a period where cesareans are becoming more and more common over the past few decades. And since they're scheduled ahead of time, the doctors will tend to fit them into their schedules during normal business hours, like, 9 to 5, Monday through Thursday, Monday through Friday sometimes. So it's just leading to this, it's changing the distribution of births. So there's more daytime births instead of nighttime births. And that's also causing there to be a greater preponderance of certain like rising signs or certain placements of like the sun being in certain houses, like in the top half of the chart and stuff like that. And so it's just an interesting thing to think about what the implications of that are in the long term, especially if it keeps heading in that direction.
Yeah, like there's going to be maybe potentially a higher percentage of people with the sun if they're scheduled C-sections, they're usually first thing in the morning. So that's like sun 12th, sun 11th houses usually. Right. And you can end up with a cesarean section. I know someone I know had gone into labor naturally, but ended up with a cesarean, and it happened later in the day. So but the scheduled ones do tend to happen in the morning. And so it's not even just in the top half of the chart. It's usually just in that 12th, 11th, 10th houses.
Yeah. So it's interesting to think about like, or a world in which like a night birth, like somebody born at midnight with the sun in the 4th house is like a unique thing. Yeah. Versus a ton of people with the sun in like the 10th house or the 11th house or something like that.
Yeah. And it's thought provoking. I don't know that I necessarily have answers, but I believe there was a study done some years ago that indicated more babies are generally born near the full moon rather than the new moon. So there's sort of an argument there that there are more of certain types of moon phases, for instance, if that's something that you
yeah.
consider, right? Like if it's more common for people to go into labor nearer the full moon. And so, there's more people potentially born with like the gibbous full moon and disseminating moon phases.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean,
Mm.
the full moon brings things to fruition, right? The
Yeah.
cup overfloweth.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and there was already like Wendy Stacy, who I did that episode with, which is titled "The Increasing Frequency of Cesarean Section Births," said there was already tendencies towards certain births occurring naturally on certain times of the day and on certain days of the week, but just that this was like shifting things even more in a certain direction due to just societal and technological things happening at this time.
Yeah.
So do you guys know what day you were born on? What day of the week?
I do. Do you guys? You must know, right? It's on our charts.
Yeah.
I'm a Tuesday Mars girl.
Oh, okay.
What are you guys?
I'm Monday's child. Right.
Oh, the moon.
There was
That makes
some
sense.
rhyme I remember when I was younger. It was like Monday's.
Yeah.
Was it Monday's child is fair of face, Tuesday's child is full of grace, and I don't remember the rest. But I remember
Monday's child poem. Monday's child is fair of face. Tuesday's child is full of grace. Wednesday's child is full of woe. Thursday's child has far to go. Friday's child is loving and giving. Saturday's child works hard for his living. And the child that is born on the Sabbath day is bonny and blithe and good and gay. There you go.
I like that. I was born on Thursday. Do you guys know the stories surrounding your birth? Like, do you know if you were like a induced birth or C-section
I
birth
was
or something?
3 weeks premature. My mom and dad had just moved into a little house out in the country, and they were like retiling or like regrouting the fireplace when my mom went into labor. And then let's see, they went to the hospital and the doctor was out of town. And so they tried to delay labor by giving her a screwdriver, like vodka and orange juice. And yeah,
that's how it started.
And
apparently,
then...
apparently that did succeed in delaying the labor. And then I was born in the afternoon, and I was the only baby in the hospital. But
wow.
I was 3 weeks premature, so I was severely jaundiced. I was also born with jet black hair. Yeah,
wow.
It was all lightened except for one patch, which stayed black. And let's see, and I didn't have my stomach valve didn't really work for the first year. So if you turn me upside down, everything would fall out.
It just came out. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I don't know my birth story. My mum passed away when I was a child, and my dad just says you were born and you were healthy. He's like, he remembers like one of my brothers was a cesarean section. So he's like, that was a bit dramatic, and one of your sisters had the cord around her neck, but you were just born and it was sort of fine. The only thing the story that I have from when I was young is, shortly after I was born, or maybe I was a couple of weeks old, we were at home in the family home, and I was lying on the mat or something, and Dad was looking at me, and he sort of said, oh, if I could just have 5 more like you, I'd be a happy man. And you've got to be careful what you wish for, because he did have another 5. We're not all the same, but he has, I'm from a large family. People may not know that. I'm the eldest of 6. So do you know your birth story, Chris?
Yeah. And I wanted to say just briefly, like your son is in the first house, so you would have been born like around sunrise early in the morning at least.
Yes, right on this. Like I was born. Yeah, so my mum must have gone into labor naturally, and it was a natural. I mean, delivery, if you like, quote unquote.
Yeah, so there's some sort of story there where at least relatively late at night or early in the morning, she must have gone into labor.
Yeah, I know. Now I'm like, I'm going to have to call. Maybe one of my aunts will know. They're the keepers of the family stories. So I'm going to have to report back next episode.
Yeah, well, it's just something interesting to think about in terms of what were the circumstances of birth, not just the birth time, but what was happening around that time. I know Firmicus Maternus in the 4th century, he has like a few like omenological things that he mentions, like if the native was born during a thunderstorm and there was like a bolt of thunder when the native was born, then it means this, or like something like that. And it's something I think about from time to time. I don't have a super good story. It was just kind of a funny story that apparently my mom, and dad were either she had gone into labor or something, but my dad had a haircut scheduled, so they went and he was getting his haircut, and then the lady cutting his hair said, "When do you do?" And she looks at my mom and says, "When do you do?" And she says, "Right now." And for somehow, like, she had gone into labor. I don't fully understand this story, but then they went from there to the hospital. But she said it was like the worst haircut that my dad had ever gotten because the hairstylist was like so nervous that she was just like trying to get it done as fast as possible, and then they went to the hospital, and I was born at 1:28 p.m. in the afternoon.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, there are certain signs, of course, women know they're in labor and you don't always want to go to the hospital too quickly. So she might have been like it's early labor, but you're her eldest child, right?
I was the second.
The second. Okay. So she would have recognized the signs. So then she might have been more confident to just say it's, we've got a bit of time, get your hair cut or something.
Yeah, so maybe something like that.
I don't know.
But interesting thing, I don't know, I'm not sure what the broader like symbolic significance of that is, but something interesting to think about for everybody to figure out what your birth story is and if that has any symbolic significance either with your later life or just in terms of your chart, since there's parts of the chart that are supposed to theoretically indicate like what the labor was like and if there was anything notable during the labor itself or not.
Yeah, I think it's really fun to hear like clients' birth stories and, notice different signatures in the chart potentially. It's really interesting. I can tell
Yeah.
we're going to have some great comments on YouTube and Facebook around this episode, people's birth stories.
Yeah, if anybody's got any interesting birth stories, let us know. Or if there's any interesting correlations in your birth chart with, your birth, let us know and like what the circumstances were surrounding it. Only other thing I did one episode at the beginning of the month where I released this interview with Clive Cavan, who published the Regulus edition of Lily in 1985. And that was a really fun and interesting historical interview talking about like the republication, the first wave of republication of ancient texts. And he brought to the interview like a first edition of William Lilly from 1647, which was exciting because I didn't realize that books like that were still in circulation and were still like in collections or sometimes available, that you can actually find them. But yeah, so that got me excited to look into them. I've been getting into this whole thing about like antiquarian books and the whole antiquarian book thing. And I know that's something you've already been involved with to some extent, Austin, or at least you have friends that move in those circles.
Yeah. Being a longtime attendee of the Esoteric Book Conference, which is now the Text and Traditions Conference, I have many antiquarian friends, well, just people who like fine editions of things, who want that to be on the bookshelf for the rest of their life. And if they're, if you love a book and you're not going to read it once and then it's going to sit there for 10 years, getting the finest version of that. And then some people do it as an investment. That's and I think that overlaps with the people who do it out of love and appreciation of books as art objects.
Yeah. Well, along those lines, I'm super excited. I found quite by luck,
Yes.
a first edition of William Lilly's Christian
Very
Astrology,
nice.
which is the oldest English language, like major textbook written in English on astrology. It was published in 1647, so it's nearly 400-year-old book. And I'm so excited that I found that because I didn't know stuff like that was still around, and I came across it quite by chance. But yeah, I'm thinking about attending that Texts and Traditions, colloquium or conference in September, because that sounds like an interesting world that I'm just starting to learn about and get used to.
Yeah,
That's
it's in Seattle every year in September. It's nice. There's some speakers and
Cool.
there's a very nice book fair.
Yeah, because my love of books and astrology books is already very developed, but that's like a whole other world of like, priceless books or fine edition books and things like that. I know that's something that you did which I sort of understood theoretically when you did it, when the first edition of your Decans book was published, and there was like a super fancy version, like a limited edition version of it. But I have like a greater appreciation of now, I think a few years later, understanding the whole antiquarian book
Nice.
trade.
Yeah, when there were a couple layers of fancy. There were there was the trade
Yes.
paperback, and then there were 3 layers of fancy.
Yes. And so speaking of books, when is your new edition coming out? Because people keep asking me about it. Now I'm starting to get hassled about when's Austin's Decans book gonna
It'll be out in
come
the
out
fourth
again.
quarter.
So-
It'll be out. You'll be able to
Fourth
have it
quarter?
in your hands by Christmas.
Okay. And speaking of hassling people about books, Kelly, when is your book on secondary progressions coming out?
Well, there's now a bit of pressure actually to get it out for ESA 2020, but that was always the goal, to have it out for ESA 2020. So once we get a little settled here, about mid-August actually, probably on some of those nice elections, will be when the rest of my work on the manuscript starts in earnest. And so we are working towards, it'll probably be published mid 2020, I guess, or maybe there'll be the official launch at ESA, but that's the goal. Yeah.
Brilliant. So you may be giving a workshop on secondary progressions at the ESAR conference in September of 2020. And so the goal is to have books on secondary progressions in hand by that time.
Ready to go. Yeah. Because every now and then it pops up on social media and it just reminds me of how little information there is on the topic and how curious people are. I know I've given lots of workshops and I've got online courses and things, but I know for me personally as a learner, how valuable having a book that you can just refer back to time and time again. And so, yeah, that's the goal, to put all my theories, which are a little unusual because there is traditional techniques in there, even though secondary progressions, as far as we know, is a relatively modern technique. So there's a traditional flavor to it. And then, a bunch of examples. So it's really accessible. I'm really excited to get it. And I just last year, 2018, taught some modules that gave me the missing bits of theory that I just hadn't quite fully perfected. And so it's really well timed how it's all come together.
Yeah, and that's something in general. There are things that I think we would take for granted in conversation that, anybody past a certain level of involvement in astrology just knows. And then somebody says, "Oh, well, what book do I get on that?" And you're like, it's mentioned in this one section of Firmicus, but that's, there's a familiarity that goes well beyond that. And, it's like, 4 or 5 people have taught it, but I don't know what to tell you for a book. And I think that we are, we're in a phase and maybe just entering a phase where some of the textual record is going to catch up with what astrologers these days know.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if you guys, on that subject of books, I have received in the last 6 weeks many requests to participate in astrological books. We're looking to a publishing company saying, we're looking to do a book on astrology, this and that. Are you interested in being a writer for this book or the writer for this book? And in the years I've been working, I'm doing less astrology writing now than I have in the past, with probably a lower public profile because I've written for a lot more magazines in the past than I am now. And I'm just sort of realizing how hungry now the publishing market is jumping on the astrological bandwagon, if you like, in terms of wanting to put out more books of varying levels on astrology because they're noticing that zeitgeist shift, if you like.
Yeah, because it was like the publishing of astrology books was on the decline for years, and then suddenly we've seen this resurgence over the past year or so, where suddenly not only are publishers like more interested suddenly, and I've seen that as well, but also there's new astrology books coming out by major publishers. So it's like Annabelle Gatt's book, The Astrology of Love and Sex, just came out. I know Chani Nicholas has a book coming out, an intro to astrology book later this year, which I'm excited about.
And I think Jessica Laniado, and I never quite pronounce her last name properly, and I apologize for that. I think she has a book coming out too.
Does she? Okay.
Yeah. So there's just a lot. And I know there's a few groups of astrologers that are all contributing to series of astrology books that'll be coming out as well. So it's fascinating how that tide is rising again.
Yeah. That's really exciting, actually. Are you going to do any of that, or have you considered it?
I haven't I haven't got back to the emails yet. I've been looking at these emails coming thinking, do I, and I've had to think about it. And obviously the progressions book is my priority. But then the crazy part of me is like, maybe we could squeeze another one in. But based on the experience of you guys and just watching you with your own books, I'm very reluctant to take on anything else right now until that first book is out.
Good. Yeah. Get the first book out.
Yeah.
I want to see that book on secondary progressions, because then I can recommend it to everybody. And that's still one of our most popular past podcast episodes, was the one you and I did on secondary progressions that went so well.
Yeah. And I do still get feedback about that. And if people are looking for more info, just search. I'm not sure what episode number it is, but it'll be on the Astrology Podcast list. And Chris might look it up for us now, because that's basically an intro to progressions right there.
Yeah, that was episode 144 on the astrologypodcast.com/episodes, titled Secondary Progressions. Every day symbolizes a year.
Yay.
All right. Well, I think then we're at 2 hours, so it's time to wrap up this episode. Thanks a lot for joining me today, guys.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Talk about the start of a new era.
Yeah, I'm really excited about seeing what your backgrounds look like exactly 1 month from now. So we have a nice picture of Austin's, and we got a nice picture of Kelly's. So we will take a snapshot and we'll check in 1 month from now and see how things look.
See how they go. Because I was just thinking, now that Austin and I have moved, we have all moved in the last few months.
Yeah.
All of us. Yeah. Which is quite a thing.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a big deal, and you don't realize how big of a deal it is until you do it. And then when you're in the midst of it, you're like, wow, this is a lot of work.
Never again. Never again.
And then you think, I'm never doing this again.
Right.
Well, you can actually say that, Austin, because you're in like your forever home. I'm thinking, oh my God, at some point in a few years, we're going to have to go back because we're here on a time limited contract. So I'm not going to worry about that now, though.
All right, cool. All right, guys. Well, thank you and good luck next month. Thanks to all the patrons who joined us today. There's like 40 people in the audience who are all patrons on the live access tier. Thanks to all the patrons who support the podcast, because pretty much my ability to do a lot of the episodes and the interviews that I've been doing lately has been largely predicated on that. I'm getting ready to launch a new Patreon tier on Patreon where people can get a mention and a shout out at the end of the episodes. And I'm also going to be launching some advertising stuff, and have been talking to a couple of companies like Astro Gold, who I use their astrology app all the time. So I'm totally open to promoting it. Yeah, so if anybody wants to support the show and you listen to the show regularly, please consider supporting it and pitching in a few dollars just to buy me a cup of coffee each month. I drink a lot of coffee, but if you can throw in just like $4 a month, then that'll buy me at least one, which I will drink in episodes such as this one. So thanks to all the patrons currently doing that, and thanks to everybody who signs up over the course of the next month to get access to some of those benefits. You can find out more information by searching for the Astrology Podcast on Patreon or going to theastrologypodcast.com/subscribe. So thanks everyone for listening or watching this episode, and we will see you again next month at some point when we talk about the astrology of September. So until then, take care.
Bye, everyone.